Testing. Testing 1, 2.
Testing, testing. I'll check with all of them. Testing. Testing.
Testing.
Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Okay. Okay, so that's good like that.
Okay, Austin. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular board governance workshop meeting for Adelanto Elementary School District. Today is Tuesday, October the 29th, 2024. This meeting is being called to order. The time is 3:43. Ms. LeVey, will you please take roll?
Madam President, I'll take note that trustee Webster will not be with us tonight, and trustee Stewart is running behind. Trustee Turner,
Turner, present.
trustee Soto,
Soto present.
trustee La French.
Love French present. The quorum has been established. Will we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. Thank you.
Madam President, trustee Stewart arrived at 3:44.
Thank you. Section 2, adoption of the agenda. Ms. LeVey, do we have any proposed additions, deletions, and adjustments in the order of business?
Madam President, we do not.
Section 2.02, adoption of the agenda. Trustees, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Trustee Turner, I motion to adopt the agenda as stated.
Soto, second.
Ms. LeVey, please take the vote.
Trustee Soto,
Soto, aye.
trustee Turner,
Turner, aye.
trustee Stewart,
Stewart, aye.
trustee La French.
Love French, aye. Motion passed. Section 3, public testimony. Ms. LeVey, do I have a blurb?
Madam President, we have no speakers for this part of the meeting.
Okay. No need to read that blurb then. Thank you. Okay, section 4, staff reports and presentation. Dr. Walker?
At this time, thank you, President LaFrench. At this time, we have Dr. Musarino, who will be leading our governance session for this afternoon.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the Board of Education, Interim Superintendent Walker. My name's Ellen Miserino, and I'm privileged and honored to be here, and also to all of our guests and everyone out in YouTube Streamland tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Austin, if you'd be kind enough to put the first slide on. So Austin, yep. So the board began the process of building towards an effective governance and public education program this past August in a workshop, full-day workshop on August 2nd, the theme of which was all about systems coherence and leading this organization in an effective manner in the interest of student outcomes. We want happy and successful children, we want happy and successful employees, and we certainly want our community to be proud of our school. So we started to embark upon this process. Austin, if you would forward the slide. So again, the theme to keep in mind is all about systemic coherence. We want to ensure that everything and every action that is taken will impact the children of this organization. Next slide. So tonight, we're going to begin with Learning-Centered Collaborative, which is a organization that is here to help this entire organization to continue to lift itself in a way that is going to help our children be successful. Then we're going to move on to the governance, to the primary meeting communications norms, because when we first did this meeting, we had someone else in the seat, in Dr. Walker's seat. So we're going to kind of review some of those things and try to agree on some primary norms and protocols as we move forward. And then the governance calendar that we began the process of. If we have some time, we might be a little short on time, so we'll see how far we could get on that. But again, this is part of a series of workshops, so we'll get what we could get done today. And then hopefully as part of that governance calendar, we set these meetings up regularly, these workshops, and we just take a little at a time, an hour, a couple hours at a time, because it's a lot of information to digest. So given that, I'd now like to hand things over to Katina Hancock from the Learner-Centered Collaborative.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Katina Hancock. I'm a partner at Learner-Centered Collaborative. We're an education nonprofit that works across the country with systems to really think about learner-centered education. And so we have been contracted to come and support you in the development of what we call a framework for the future and a blueprint for success. And so thought we could just share a little bit about that process. And we have an invitation for you of how to be engaged as we embark on the work. Oh, always click the wrong way. So always just like to start with trying to center what we're doing and why we're here with students and learners in the community. So I won't ask you to share out loud, but I would love for you just to pick one of these prompts to kind of anchor yourself in why we're here today. So what are our hopes and dreams for the community? If you maybe want to jot down on a sticky or on your note paper, that would be great. You also have the slides in front of you if you just want to jot down on the paper. Great. So as we go through this little overview, I just hope you'll keep that in the top of your mind. So we have drafted kind of a theory of change around this work. It will evolve over time as we start to uncover some of the learnings from our discovery visit that started yesterday. But we really think that if we can convene students, educators, and the community, and we reflect on our mission, vision, We also have discussed creating values as a system. How do we behave together? That we can really set a vision for the future of Adelanto. And we will be able to think about the types of learning experiences and the whole child outcomes that we aspire to accomplish. We also believe that if we can identify some strategic priorities over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, it will allow us to kind of chart a course towards that vision for the future. And then finally, if we can create this document that is a guiding resource and a tool, it promotes the coherence that Dr. Musarino was just talking about, that the community becomes very aware. What do we care about? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? So your framework for the future will start with us beginning with the vision, mission, and values. Why do we exist as an organization? Where are we going? How do we behave along the way? From there, we draft what we call a learner profile, or a portrait of a learner, which is the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that we believe children need in order to be successful, not only in school, but in the world beyond school. From there, we would create a learning model, which is the types of learning experiences that happen in classrooms, on campuses, within the community that help develop the learner profile outcomes. And then finally, crafting a strategic plan that identifies some of the big moves that the system needs to take in order to create these types of classrooms. We call the top part the why, so the mission, vision, and values. The learner profiles, the what, the learning models, the how, and then the strategic plan is the what's next. So we know that the system has an existing mission, vision, and values, and when we begin this work, we might just have a conversation around, is this still who we are and what we're about? Does anything need to be refreshed based on our current discovery? And then do we believe that values would benefit us as we work together? So I want to just give a couple quick examples of each of the elements of what we're creating. So the portrait of a learner, again, is the knowledge, skills, and mindsets that we believe are critical for our learners to develop as they move through education and into the world beyond. And that might be college, career, service. So these are just a couple examples of some of our other partners, and you'll see some of these empathetic citizen, effective communicator, creative innovators. And we'll surface some of these initial ideas based on all of the discovery visits and the student forums that we've had so far. The learning model defines the expectations of teaching and learning. It also helps us align how we provide professional development, coaching, support. If everybody's really clear about what learning should look and feel like in a classroom, it allows us to be better together. And then the blueprint is how we bring the framework to life. What are some of our strategic priorities that we're going to put time, energy, and resources behind to start to shift the needle such that we can promote those whole child outcomes? We believe that when we get this level of clarity in a system, it allows us to navigate ambiguity because we know that the world's evolving very rapidly. But if we have our priorities mapped out, we can work through that gray area. It also shows us where we're tight and where we can be loose with how we allocate resources, how we support our people. And then finally, coherence. It gives us common language. It allows us to be talking about the same things at the same time. That's the most important things in our system. So I wanted to kind of set the stage of the work, but then give you a little bit of a chance to look at some data about how the world's evolved so swiftly. We like to talk about AI, and it used to be that that was a thing of the future, and all of a sudden it's here, and it's rapidly evolving. So in your packet, slides 14 through 19, if you could just do a quick little walkthrough, and then I would love if we could just have a few minutes for you all to share out. What do you think about the data and what it's telling us? So just a few minutes to review those. I know that's quite a bit to review, but anybody have an aha or a wonder, a surprise?
I think for me, it's slide 16, and it's the jobs that will be most influenced by AI. And then seeing, as somebody who grew up watching the Terminator and Skynet, it's like, oh, we don't want that. But, I've been seeing how teachers are using AI to help them create content to help them teach in the classroom more effectively. And so, but that one, I was like, where are we?
I also noticed on page 17, I mean, some of the high demand jobs are uh, are the skills needed for these high demand jobs. That's not being measured on the reading achievement. And so that's something that I noticed is that we're not measuring the skills necessarily that are going to be impactful for future careers or jobs that are in high demand.
Yeah, my mic. I noticed that for reading that over the years that we're steadily declining. And I wonder if within these last probably 4 years, due to the more that children are dependent on AI and features like that, that it's easy for them to just speak things rather than to read it, that could have something correlation between their reading scores not going up because they really don't have to. They're able to. I think we used to have those little booklets that were like, I don't know what they call them, like the little yellow booklets that were like the short version of the book or something like that. Oh yeah, the Cliff Notes. We had Cliff Notes. They don't even need a Cliff Note. They just need about a half a sentence and boom, they have everything that they need to right in front of them.
Yeah, it's a real balance. We know that literacy and numeracy are super important and want to lose sight of that. And how do we also work towards measuring those durable skills that we know are going to be so critical for kids to navigate this type of system that's changing so rapidly? Yeah.
Okay, I noticed a couple things.
Your mic.
Just leave it on.
These mics, okay. On page 1, again, what President LaFrench indicated, the reading achievement. I'm looking at where we started in 2003 to where we are. We went up a little bit and went down for the African American student, and this is nationwide. It's happening in, I guess, pretty much every district across the country, and I see that because these are national scores. I also see that the Hispanic as well look like we're following pretty much, the African American Hispanic is following the same pathway, whereas the Asian and Asian Pacific Islanders, their scores are going up, whereas everyone else is going down. On page, and that's a great concern of mine, on page 5, student engagement decreases over time. That's another priority for me. I see back in, this is 5th grade. Is this 5th, am I looking at 5th grade? Is this 5th grade?
The fifth
5th,
is
6th,
on
7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Right. It seems that students are being disengaged as they, move on to every grade. Kind of balance out in 11th and 12th, but that's something that we really need to pay attention to because we want our kids to be engaged. We want it to reverse. I would like to see that curve reverse instead of going down. So we have to look at what needs to be done to re-engage our students and keep them engaged for learning.
Such a great segue. So this quote by Edward Stemming, every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And we believe through this community process of creating the framework that we can really center the system on designing just what you're asking for. Increases not only in engagement, but also in student achievement, both academically and whole child. We're gonna leverage the design process as we embark on this journey. So the last couple days, we've really been in the space of noticing and empathizing through forums, school visits. We did student forums. We did 12 school sites today, and I have to say, it filled my bucket to be around teachers and principals and learners. We were very welcomed by staff. We saw lots of great activities in classrooms. The kids were open and honest and sharing with us, so it was just a really powerful experience. And we'll make sure that we elevate that data. We're gonna provide the actual recordings to the principals so they're able to use them with their staff. We really want this to be a transparent process, bring in as many people as possible. And as we start to prototype, we're gonna make sure that we create opportunities in the community to test what we're designing, get feedback, make revisions as we go, so that this is a really well thought out, community-based process. And it can be messy. Because innovation, if we had the manual, if we had the curriculum, if we had the package, we could just offer it up and give it to everybody and it would happen. But because your community is unique, we want to create something that is going to be supportive of your needs. So we're going to be building a guiding coalition, which we believe is a cross-section of the community. It's teachers, it's leaders, it's community members, parents, our presidents of the labor groups, students, and we would love to invite the board to engage. We know you can't all come and be part of it, but if a couple of you are willing to be part of the process, we think it could be really meaningful. And for those that aren't able to attend, possibly you recruit somebody from your constituency group that can be a member of that so that we know we have really good representation. So we've included the dates for our convenings. We'll kick off in January and then we'll meet monthly. And our hope is to have the framework ready and publicized to give to you for approval to begin implementation. And so we just I know you won't make a commitment about who can participate in what, but we would love to just encourage you as you're able to have conversations to see who might be able to join each of those meetings and then how could you bring in other folks to the work. Thank you so much for your time. We're very appreciative of all of the support from Dr. Walker and all of our team to be so welcoming. It's been a couple great days so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thank you, Katina. All right, now we're going to, speaking of commitment, that was a perfect last slide because that's why we're here doing this work. And I greatly appreciate the board's commitment to this work and the goal of creating a coherent system. So it starts with the board because it's the board's vision for this community. The mission operated by the superintendent and the team, all with purpose. And I'm confident that Adelanto Elementary School District could be an absolute model district for others to follow. I've seen enough now to know, and I'm 4 decades in as an educator, as you all know, and I have seen enough to recognize what culture means and how it impacts student achievement. And the culture here is positive. And the commitment to the community is positive. So the standard that this board's setting by committing to coherent governance is going to go a long way. Next slide. Oh, I guess I could do it myself, right, Austin? Oh, there we go. Okay, so primary meeting communication norms. As I mentioned when I opened, when we last went through this process, Dr. Albert was in the seat. So it's important to refresh, I think, on what some of those ideas we talked about were at that time, and then try to set a minimum number, what I call primary norms and protocols, so that the interactions between the Board of Education and the superintendent are free of role conflict. There's always going to be some kind of conflict. That's okay. You're a team and you work things out like a marriage. It's okay. It's not going to be perfect, and we don't expect or want it to be perfect. But what we want is it to be functioning
Yes.
at a high level. So that's why we have agreements. So quickly, remembering the retreat. So the process of laying the foundation, like a home, right? And that's where it started. So if you look at the big screen here, you could see, and these were in the original slides, by the way. We began to lay the foundation for a value-based governance culture specific to how the board will function, primarily in its relationship with the superintendent. And then there were 5 ideas that we discussed and talked about. And one is comparing the board's actions and policies to determine whether or not it's performed as it was committed to, because the board engaged in a self-evaluation previous to that, and we had the opportunity to go through that and look at some of the things that we want to focus on as far as improvement goals. That will, again, happen over the course of these series of sessions. The second one, provide a means for self-correction if actions deviate from policy. So there has to be self-policing, right? So there has to be that commitment to that and understanding, and that certainly starts with the norms and protocols. The third one, maintain clarity of roles. So as I mentioned, though, there always will be some conflicts, and that's okay. We just have to talk through it, understand it, sometimes even agree to disagree. But we do want to be clear about what those roles are. If you remember the exercise we did, we had about 25 different roles and responsibilities. And I asked you all to say,
Whose?
yeah, is it the board's primary responsibility? Is it both of you, or is it the superintendent's? And almost everything was the whole team. There were very few that really were just the board, very few that were just the superintendent. So we recognize that there's a lot of overlap, and that's okay. Right, so we want to make sure that when you make decisions, you're informed by the board, and before the informed by the superintendent rather, and before the superintendent takes actions or moves in certain directions, that she's informed by the board. So it's just a two-way street. The fourth one, model continuing performance improvement. If kids aren't getting better, then we have to continue to look at ourselves. We're not blaming external forces. We're not blaming poverty or language, or can't blame COVID anymore. Yes, we need to remember that history and honor all of that. But at the same time, we can't blame external forces. We have to attribute student success and failure to our behaviors. Starts at the board, but of course trickles down to the classroom. And we certainly want everyone to recognize that everything they do affects kids. Right? That campus supervisor, that office staff member, the cafeteria staff, it all affects kids. Right? It could change a kid's day for the better or for the worse. So our actions, we have to be held accountable for them. And the last one was build capacity for sustainability in the event of a board or superintendent turnover. What districts have turnover? I mean, that's a natural thing. So, and some school boards, have term limits. You notice that in a lot of places. Not common, but you see it. So organizations need to have the structures in place and the policies and practices in place that will be able to sustain the success of the organization if there is change, if there is turnover, because that's, there will be at some point. So we want to make sure that the organization is able to handle that. All right, so this is hard to see, but you have a hard copy in front of you, or you will in a second. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I like handing out
Thank you.
papers. Yep, do that. That's toxicity.
And it's cold in here.
Teachers. Oh, yeah, yeah, I do have this when I get up, right. Thank you for reminding me. Austin just reminded me, they also have the remote, so, because I'm not good at sitting. If you remember the first retreat, I don't know if I sat for 2 minutes, I'm not good at it. All right, so the goal here, given number one, which is the commitment that this organization, this Board of Education already has made, that establishing norms and protocols is something the board's committed to. So given that, what we're going to do first, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes for this. I'm going to set my timer because it's already 4:15. You have a board meeting at 6. There's a hard end time here at 5:30, right? At 5:25. So hard, yeah. So we want to try to get as much done as we can, and what we don't get done, we're going to continue doing as we move forward. So I am going to have a little more of a strict timer so that we could try to get this done. So for starters, I'm going to ask everyone without discussion individually. Number 2, I'll read it out loud while you're looking at it for our listening audience or watching audience. Individually and without discussion, reflect on unsuccessful teams you have observed or been a part of in your professional life outside of the boardroom. What were the negative behaviors that prevented the unsuccessful teams from functioning at high levels? Write each negative behavior on your blue sticky. No, that yellow's for the other ones. I'm going to come around and give you the blues.
You have to come prepared. They should already be here.
Yeah, you should have been there. I like to walk around. There you are. And Z said, let me put all that stuff out there. I'll do it. I'll say, well, I said, I'll handle it. Don't worry. See, that's what I get for not listening to Z. Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, finish your thought. Okay. Who would like to share first?
I
Ma-
started, I'm sorry, I just blurted out and I have my mic on. There we go.
Yeah.
Well, I'll wait.
That could be a norm. We can start raising our hand.
So I started with like sports teams. I can't name a few because I watch so much ESPN, they all blur. But when they get frustrated, you know, they're losing, they start to fight with amongst themselves or with the other team or even with their coach. And that becomes the focus of the game and not trying to win. So that's what I've seen.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's means you lose in sight of your mission, right? And that's common. And when you lose sight of the mission, it's really hard to reach your goals. So thank you for that. Who else would like to share? Madam President, I think you were ready.
Um, I noticed that people are closed-minded.
You need to bring your mic down.
I noticed that people are closed-minded. They can't be open to someone else's perspective sometimes in the meetings. Are there, it always throws me off when people walk in late. You've already disrupted the meeting by walking in late. Just like no respect for other people's time. And then that kind of like sets the tone when people walk in late. And another thing is just sometimes I notice that people just disagree to disagree. You know, they may say that, oh, I don't care for that. And then you say, oh, can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me why? I just don't. But then that just leaves it flat on the table. So it's no real discussion that can be had.
Yep. Yeah. Two dysfunctions without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Trustee Turner. Mike.
Not prepared to engage in what we are working on. And then they tend to argue because they're not prepared to make excuses for it. And that could be very disengaging because when you're a part of a group or a part of, whatever it is, you need to come prepared. Read the material, study the material before you get there. And also, no commitment to the process. Rely on everyone else to do the work. And then, like President LaFrench, just be negative about everything, disagree about everything instead of coming up with a solution or talking about what it is that you disagree with, want to argue about it. I'm just not committed to making the process better.
Right. Being solution based
Right.
and respecting the process. All teams operate as one, and yeah, there's a process you have to go through to resolve problems and conflicts. Trustee Soto, thank you, Trustee Turner.
I think it's kind of been touched already, but I think it's the way that the lack of collaboration sometimes can hinder progress. And that kind of goes with individualism, kind of just focusing on the individual's kind of own wants or needs rather than as it's working as a team. And that also kind of leads on to being respectful. I think there's a certain tone that we should be carrying ourselves, and we should be leading by examples on how we speak to each other as adults. And so I think that having a certain level of tone or of respect is important um, for us to continue to work together and not hinder the process of progress.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so any Superintendent Walker, yours.
So,
You have
thank
a
you.
few.
I do. I would say lack of cohesion,
Okay,
no collaboration,
right.
no consideration of others' voice or ideas, and then lack of respect. Those things hinder any group moving forward in the direction that is positive, um, that is cohesive and coherent.
Right. No, I absolutely. So in school districts, you have so many different groups, so many different teams, from teacher teams, leadership teams, boards team, governance team. So the hope is that a commitment to process, a commitment to the greater good is something that, again, it starts with the board. Right? So again, it is a matter of understanding what those processes are, agreeing on behavioral norms and protocols, and then having a way to police it when in fact there is a violation. Okay, so now the next step, now we're going to move to your yellow stickies, Trustee Stewart, so you have those. And now, individually and without discussion, I'm going to come along and collect your blue ones while you're doing this part. Reflect on successful teams. Again, outside the boardroom, you're still not talking about the governance team. Reflect on what you've observed that have been positive behaviors that help a team function. So what are some of the things you've been part of or observed on a functioning team that you really believe will help this team eventually get better? And I'm going to collect your blues. Start, 2 minutes. I hate sitting. I hate sitting. Finish your thoughts. Well, we'll wait for Trustee Stewart to return anyway, but try to wrap it up. Okay, we're going to now share. Who would like to start this time? Okay, positive team behaviors outside of the boardroom.
I'd say accountability, whether that's for basically for their own actions.
Okay,
So everyone being accountable for their own role in the team.
right, great. Holding themselves accountable.
Yep.
Yep.
I had put down a complimenting each of other's strengths, where one team member might be strong in one area, another may be strong in another one, and they can work together.
Right.
Together.
Sure. So obviously, everyone has strengths, everyone has weaknesses, and certainly as a team, you want to help everyone get better. If everyone gets better in the organization, everyone gets a little bit better. Eventually, students will do better as a result of that. Even if everyone gets just a little better, when it's an entire organization, it has an impact. And the literature is pretty clear on the fact that taking action, particularly related to continuous improvement, impacts student achievement. Who was next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
Okay, respectful engagement. I have several. Agree to disagree. Respect each other's opinion. Commitment. Honest communication. Engaged and prepared. And understanding the mission.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Madam President?
I have having input on the meeting norms. What would I do without her? No one would hear me. Having input on the on your meeting norms, you know, when you decide together what they're going to be rather than just given to
Yep.
you.
Absolutely.
Just sticking to the meeting norms, making that you're sure that you're there on time and you finish on time. Having open communication, respect. I put agree to disagree, and being open-minded. But I truly believe that any of the teams that I've been involved with, the ones that actually say, okay, these are the 10 meeting norms we're going to have, whether it be not eating or talking or, you know, waiting, raising your hand. When those are respected, the meeting flows, start and finish on time. Those are the best. The ones that just flow however you want them to. People talk a long time. There's no set time, and they just kind of like go on and on and on.
Yeah. It speaks to
No control.
right. It speaks to Trustee Soto's accountability
Mhm.
norm, right? If you're holding yourself accountable to follow those norms because you agreed to them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, otherwise it's hard to get work done because you end up just going in circles, like you said. Okay, very good. Interim Superintendent Walker.
I have very similar ones that I've already heard. So respecting each other, agree to a set of norms for behavior, assume positive intentions, have clear vision and mission for the work, being prepared with agendas and outcomes, and then being open for feedback.
Excellent. All right, so now we're going to transition to the same exercise, and I'm going to come around and collect your yellow, so just kind of put those off on the side so I could grab them. Now we're going to do the same exercise, but we're going to relate it not to just teams that you've experienced outside of the boardroom, but your experience with boards of education, whether observed or your own true experiences. Again, global, in a global sense, not personal, in a global sense, but what are the behaviors that lead to governance teams not governing effectively or unsuccessfully? Okay, so this is back to your blue stickies. What prevents governance teams from carrying out their mission. I'm going to use that, Trustee Turner. We're going to focus on that mission, absolutely, or prevents it. And I will collect your yellows. Thank you. Okay, about 30 more seconds. Okay, and wrap up your final thought. Okay, who would like to begin to share? These are preventative behaviors related to governance.
I would say one of them being informality. I think when we are speaking to each other very informal or present ourselves very informal, it's not helpful to the governance team as a whole. And so I think having a sense of formality behind the dais is important for a successful governance board. The other thing that I put down when I went to CSBA, I learned that we on the Board of Education, one of the biggest things that we need to do is minimize politics, because even though we are in positions, political positions, being on the school board, it's like it is much different, due to the fact that we are making decisions on education, on children, and it's different in the sense that I mean, I can even go to. I don't want to spew my view on this, but even on city councils, local races, they're supposed to be nonpartisan race. And I think the whole purpose of that is to minimize politics, so that the decisions that we make are not political, but are to improve the lives of children and their families. And so I think minimizing politics in on the school board is helpful for a governance team that is nonpartisan.
All right, very good, thank you. Well articulated. Who's next?
I put down lack of preparation.
Okay.
I had seen, and I'm not just talking about here, but when I watched the board, like they didn't know anything about the next thing on the agenda, and it's like, didn't you read the agenda? We're supposed to read the agenda, and they had to put it off, and they only meet once a month. It's like, now you gotta wait.
Right.
Lack of engagement when board members aren't engaged, when they're not paying attention, they miss the information. Then they're asking, wait a minute, what was this? I don't know. And it's like, yes, they talked about that. So, and then not thinking beyond self. There's a lot of, well, I feel, I want, I this, and it's, the board should be a we, and
Right.
the focus should be the kids, the district, and not what I think is best.
So I language is a negative behavior without a doubt. And if you're wondering why, why did we do just teams outside of the boardroom first? Well, we had two examples here. Some of those were crossovers, but Trustee Soto's example, the political implications, that's really related to school boards or other elected bodies. So there is a finite difference. So we want to make sure that we whittle that down and recognize that. Yes, there's many norms that would apply to Dr. Walker's leadership team and teacher teams and so on and so forth in an education organization. But particularly for school governance, it's a little more unique given your positions. Okay, thank you for that. Who's next? Trustee Turner.
I have several again. Not prepared for board meetings. I see, and I'm not saying this particular board, but I've had boards that come and they're just opening up their packet and not doing the research of what we should be voting on and the issues at hand. Also, not focused on what's good for kids. The focus is on everything else but kids. And that should be our main focus, on what's good for kids. Coming with their own personal agenda. Again, not focused on kids, but what's good for you and what you can get out of it. I've seen a lot of that. And basically, not prepared for the position. Do not go get the training that you need in order to be a successful and well-informed board member. There's a lot of training out there, and a lot of times board members just don't want to go. I can understand if you have a full-time job, that comes first, take care of your family. But I've seen board members that do not work and just do not have time for training.
Right.
And also non-productive discussions, and make the discussions all about them and not, again, on children. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, and those non-productive discussions typically take time away from the work, and then board meetings take longer, and now you're talking late into the evening when everyone's not as sharp and at their best, and it does have an impact. Remember during the retreat we talked about doing things the right way? so that we could do the right thing, right? So the more we follow best practices, the more we get that training, going to CSBA, getting governance training, doing these workshops, the more prepared we're going to be able to do that right thing, which is to focus our energy on kids, the mission, teaching and learning. That's what matters. What goes on in that classroom every day, if that is being held to the highest standard, our kids are going to do better. I've seen it. You've seen it. We all know it. And you're doing something about it, which is wonderful. Madam President.
Okay, I have the agendas being too full. It leads right into the tiredness because if you do have a long day, right, and you find yourself making decisions at 8, 9 o'clock at night, those are not sharp decisions that you would make at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm a perfect example of that. And talking over one another. I know that I try to pause, right? I'm learning, pausing, while someone else is talking because you giving that person the respect, of allowing them to finish their sentence is very important. And I stand by those meeting norms. When you don't have any clear norms, then the meeting just takes on, I'm a stickler for time. It just takes on a whole little wind of itself. And you look up and you've spent an hour and you haven't moved forward, and that's just going to be longer. So it's just for people that are having meetings at 10, 11 o'clock at night, you're not really doing any good. You're just going through the motions because people have already checked out at that time of the night.
No doubt about it. As a teenager, my mom and dad had a rule, said you can never be out after midnight because nothing good happens after midnight. You guys remember hearing that yourselves?
Yes.
But when it comes to board meetings, in my experience as a superintendent of schools, nothing good happens after 9 o'clock.
Yep.
It's like and today, for example, because you're starting early and doing this work now, it's a lot, right? So that's I think a wonderful norm to have, and many boards agree that they're ending at 8:30, and they say we will have to vote to extend it, or we're ending at 8:30. So it's important for the superintendent, of course, to say, okay, with these items, we need to get these items because it's a statutory requirement. But short of that, we're going to put everything off. So agenda planning becomes critical. Yeah, those are outstanding. Superintendent Walker.
Thank you. I have a few. Not being truthful and or honest, or having integrity, taking everything personal, unwillingness to engage in a respectful dialogue or discussion, having their own personal agendas, not following the Brown Act, being rude and disrespectful during meetings.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you missed anything between you all. It comes to mind in doing these workshops. Now, the last exercise before the final exercise, which will be actually identifying what it is that we will value and hold as the standard for behaviors amongst each other and as a team. Now go ahead with the positive behaviors. What are the positive behaviors that high functioning, this is yellow, yes, thank you. Reflect on successful governance teams that you've been a part of or have observed. Also things you may have learned at conferences or in your governance training. And what were those successful behaviors that helped the team function at the highest level? Okay, so I'm going to get your blues. Do you have time to do me a favor? Could you take the ones that have more than one on them and just put them on a separate one? The other ones did it. Their thoughts, their final thoughts, we're going to share out, and then we're going to do the final exercise. Our goal here is a hard stop time at 5:20. So we will pick up where we left off at our next session, because governance training is not an event. It's something that we always do, because things change all the time. We want to change with it. All right, who would like to share now successful behaviors, positive behaviors of successful and high-functioning governance teams? Who would like to start? Trustee Soto? It's like a game show. He pressed
I
the
know,
button
right?
first.
I put down structured meetings, having a structured meeting, which kind of leads on to my second bullet point, which is setting norms for the meeting. For example, everyone understanding like raising your hand if you need to speak, and then whoever's the board president will then look around, to see who's raising their hand, and having those norms and having a structured meeting and how the meeting's going to go and everyone agreeing to that, I think is going to be helpful with some of the comments that Board President LaFrench made, which was being more efficient with our meeting and our time. So I think having that structure and also setting norms.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Trustee Soto. Who's next? Trustee Stewart.
Being respectful of time, being respectful of the board. Again, with the I thing, it's a board, not me. Being engaged with pertinent questions. And those are just the three. I just put three. So just being engaged, asking the questions that have to be asked.
Absolutely. Thank you. Trustee Turner?
Willingness to help each other. Respectful dialogue. Willingness to commit to governance training. Prepared for the meetings. Make decisions that benefit children. Honest communication. And agree to disagree.
Wonderful. Madam President.
Okay, agendas that have like times on them, so then you know from how much time you're going to spend on things, especially for closed session. Ending before 8 o'clock. Being committed to the vision and having a focus on children.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Superintendent Walker.
Respectful discussions, accountability with support, focus on students, respect the positions being held and the roles that they play. Norms for the meetings, prepare with agendas reviewed and questions asked in advance of the meeting. And then I think thoughtful discussions.
Okay, perfect. Yes.
I just thought of one thing.
Please share.
I put honest in intentions.
Okay. Good intentions, yes. We've heard that definitely amongst this team. Good intentions are critical. Okay, so now the final exercise, and right now it's a few minutes before 5. So the final exercise is going to require you to get up a little bit, which is good. We'll get the blood circulating here, get you moving around. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this last batch of stickies up here. And the goal is to align the yellow with the blue. In other words, the blue behaviors are behaviors we want to extinguish. So if there is not a corresponding positive behavior, then we need to create one. Okay, so we're going to come over to the board. I'm going to just slide these chairs so there's a little more room here. Excuse me, sorry. Slide that over there a little bit. Okay, I'll put these on this one. So the goal is to cover the blue with a yellow that corresponds to it, that extinguishes it. So, yeah, so and there's and some have multiple ones on the same one. So if that's the case, if it covers 2, we'll go ahead and just use a regular blank one, and we'll just write that on there. Like there's a few on here, so. Right, so if you didn't use one stick, and I should, yeah, that's okay. Well, that's okay. What we'll do is, let's say this, see, some of them, yeah, some of them are covered in two places, like respectful, but if it is, we'll use a blank one and write it on there, okay? Okay, this is all board and governance team.
Ding, ding.
Oh, here. Here. Which one? Anything up?
Respectful
Of
of
the
the
board?
board,
Okay.
taking everything personal.
Respectful
Committed to the vision.
of the, she's the boom sound.
Agenda
There we go.
2.4. Let's do this one too. This can go on me.
There we go. Awesome. Teamwork.
We've completed our task.
Okay, so we have basically extinguished all of the behaviors that we identified as not being conducive to effective governance and acting as a team in the best interest of kids. So now the question is, do you want all of these to become your norms? Do you want to eliminate any of them? Do you want to add any of them? Because we extinguished all the negatives, we don't have to create any new ones necessarily. But if the board agrees, then these will be printed up and the language will be wordsmithed so that it comes in norm form, and then they will come to the Board of Education to vote on whether or not they will become the permanent standards for behavior.
I like that, Mike. I like that because those are things we'd like to see, so that we could be an effective board and team.
Especially that 8 o'clock. I
Well,
like that.
the fact of being mindful of the
The
time,
time.
and not having 10 million things on the agenda, that's a team thing, because I know when I was president, a lot of things were put on there, and I was like, well, I guess if it has to be done, you think it's the end of the world if it isn't on there now. But I realize now some things can wait. Some things can be pushed back.
Yeah, especially the part about having the time allotted for individual things in closed session. Because I think that's where the most time is spent.
Yes.
And to have some norms for that would push us faster. Yeah.
Yes.
And also, we can, if we can stop our meetings at 8, we can also have workshops like this to have discussions amongst the board. And I think that will be helpful as well. Our regular meetings are to approve and disapprove, or, but if there's issues that need to be discussed, we can have maybe a discussion workshop every month to talk about, basically what we're doing right now.
Absolutely. In fact, as we continue the training, really those opportunities would present themselves in the context of doing this under the governance umbrella. Right? You're doing it publicly. You're discussing expectations for behaviors, all of which will lead to more effective governance and ultimately more, better outcomes for kids. Right? Your expectations being seen. Okay, so then the next step will be to go ahead and print those out, wordsmith them, and then Dr. Walker will then bring them to the board, and you could have a discussion at a regular board meeting. You could call another special, or it could be a continuation of these workshops if you prefer. That's certainly the decision of the Board of Education of how you want to pursue it. And then the other step is to determine what you want to do in the event that a member violates the norms. So if you turn your attention to number 12, determine how to handle situations when a team member violates an agreed on norm or protocol. Team members have to be willing to take responsibility for the way the team works together, and that they must care enough to confront. Okay, well, this is yeah.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
Confronting.
I wouldn't know like how to or what to do, because you can't just be like reprimand someone as a child.
Right.
There's got to
Right.
be maybe like a manual, so I can be,
Right.
so we could be like, no, this is what you're supposed to.
Yeah.
You violated that time. The time you say you spent over 1 minute. I try it. I do, but they'll talk over me. But if it's a norm, then I could say it is now 6:35, and your time is up. I do that too.
Right. So it,
I didn't want to call names.
yeah. So there's a couple ways to proceed. One could be to have another session in the near future to have that separate discussion. In other words, bring the norms back to another session like this, maybe before your next board meeting, and then have that discussion also about the self-policing. Obviously, self-policing is anything from just a reminder to censoring, right? You hope you never have to go to that extreme, of course. But oftentimes, a norm might be violated because, like we talked earlier, getting a little frustrated maybe, or maybe overexcited. So, just like with kids, right? You're going to correct dependent upon the situation and the context. So it might be worthy of a discussion to decide as a team, okay, so that it's coming. In other words, right, Trustee Turner, remember we talked about this, Madam President, right, Trustee Stewart, Trustee Sutter, we're reminding you of this. You're not doing it publicly usually, right? So it's definitely something amongst yourselves, and that could even be a norm, or at least part of this process, is that's a conversation that starts with the board president, whose primary responsibility it would be to share the concern on behalf of the board. Okay, so that's the first decision you need to make now, is do we want to just continue this work? So right now it's 10 after.
I think that this is a good pause, because I like how you put the yellow on top, the blue, and for what we had, we can come up with meeting norms right there.
Okay.
Of things that we want to see.
Right.
And also, maybe we could debrief after the meeting, off the mic, once we adjourn. And if anyone break the norms, talking too long or whatever have you, we could talk about it right then and there. What do you think about that?
I like it, but how would we
Back there.
debrief without
We-
Brown Act?
Yeah, we can't as a board.
But then
No, you can't no, you're talking about like after, no, you can't.
Then how do we?
Trustee Turner, you got to do your mic.
How do we not publicly tell a person that you violated your norms? Do we do it in open
We wouldn't
session?
do it in open session.
So how will we do that? It's nothing in closed session
Yeah.
that we could do it.
Well, that's a good question, and that's amongst the things that you want to answer in this question. So what steps does the board want to take? So do you want to publicly remind your fellow board members? Does it depend on which norm? Some norms are less egregious than others. There might be the occasion to be able to just remind someone. You hate to think that you have to gavel someone, but you may have to, yes.
So just to add to the discussion, I think the president has leverage to remind the trustees of the norm that is being violated in a respectful way. As an example, Trustee C, thank you, however, you are violating norm number 4. Just a reminder so that they understand that they are in violation of it, and then you move on. Hopefully they get the message, but then there also has to be some systems in place, whereas what if they don't get the message?
Right.
Then what, right? So setting up a set of not necessarily kind of like consequences, but accountability to adhering to. But if you're following these other norms, then there should be something on the inside of you that says, I need to pause. We should all be in a position where we get it. The first, like, we could be emotionally attached to a conversation or a discussion, but then once we're reminded, then we should there should be a check within us as trustees to not do that, to pause and take a step back. Thank you for reminding me, President,
Right.
and then move on.
Respect.
Yes.
I know in the classroom, I start off the year, it's called whole brain training. And I have 5 rules and we practice the rules. Rule 1, follow directions quickly and quietly. Rule 2, please ask for permission to leave your seat, so on. When a student is breaking the rules, instead of me saying you broke the rules and calling them out in the class, I will say, class, what's rule 2? And the class stops and says, rule 2, raise your hand for permission to leave your seat. So it's kind of like not saying you did bad, but it's like this is a rule that was broken. And I don't do it as much because the kids now know my expectations. So the first step could be a reminder of, hey, Norm, this was broken. Hey, board, don't call out. Hey, you broke. You violated Norm this. If it continues, then I think the board president and the superintendent, because to me the superintendents seem to be more cool-headed and can, be as a third, so it doesn't turn into a he said, she said thing between the board and the board president.
In addition to that, you might want to read the norms at the beginning of the meeting so that everyone is reminded of them. So before each meeting, you're reading the norms so that everyone, so that all the trustees hear them each meeting, and that helps to keep it at the forefront of their minds as they do the work that we do.
Yeah, many districts use that, or they'll at least have it up on the screen.
Yeah, I was going to say we
and
could have
give
them
everyone
posted.
a minute to be reminded. But it seems as though more discussion might need to be had before determining exactly what consequences, and I use that term because someone might look at it as that, right, being scolded sort of thing. So much has to do with the relationship that everyone has with each other and with the board as a whole, right? Just like with kids, some kids you could talk to some way, some you can, and so on and so forth. But before deciding, so if we start with the norms, as far as the next step, so I will print these norms up, and again, we'll wordsmith them, and then we'll set the next meeting up. Absolutely, I think. Absolutely. I think your mission, your values, it's always important to remind the community and remind yourselves why we're here doing this work. I think that's a great policy too, and that's something that the board should definitely decide they want to do. And if so, then yeah, begin that immediately. And some of the work that Ms. Hancock talked about earlier has to do with visioning. And the board may very well want to take the opportunity to revisit its current mission and vision and beliefs in the event that you might want to make some changes. And that's certainly work we could do within the context of our governance workshops as well. Okay, so with that, it is just about 5:20. So the governance calendar, so I'm going to leave these with you. So the governance calendars, remember the last exercise we did where I asked you all to put on one of the posters either a study session, a workshop, right? Workshop, study session, a special meeting or a regular meeting. So all that now is on these 2 sheets. I'm going to leave this with you. So what I'd like you to do is to take a look and determine, right now they're identified by color, type of meeting, and it says it up here. Do you want to separate these meetings and set these up, set this calendar up to have all of these planned in advance, which would be ideal, so at least you could plan ahead and plan your time, or are there some that perhaps you want to mix in? But if you're committed to ending board meetings at 8 o'clock and keeping them focused on the business of the school district, then you might want to use some of the other meeting types, approaches to deep dive into things so that you could really, I prefer that model myself because you could take the time, you could spend just a couple hours on diving deep into how students are doing and what challenges you face and all that kind of stuff. So I'll leave this with Superintendent Walker to give out, and we will assemble hopefully in a couple more weeks, and we'll continue this work.
Very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along to adjournment. Trustees, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So do I motion that we adjourn?
Trustee Turner, I second.
Ms. LeVey, will you call for the vote, please?
Trustee Soto?
So do I.
Trustee Turner?
Turner, aye.
Trustee Stewart?
Stewart, aye.
Trustee La French?
Love French, aye. The time is 5:20. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.